Oh. 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 Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Anashrita Karma Phalam Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyaha. Karyam karma karoti yaha. No one can be happy in selfishness. That's called sakama karma. I act for my interest. We can only start to taste happiness through nishkama karma, where I'm acting responsibly. Nishkama karma, this purifies, clarifies the source of joy, the nature of joy, that being you. Anashitaha karma phalam, the one who does not depend on results. Another word for karma phalam is expectation. An expectation is a form of extraversion. I'm trying to find joy rather than be joy. But when one does not depend on this, they're becoming inward, looking, feeling. And the more they do this, the less of an outlet the ego has to expect, to be extrovert. This is how one practices tuning into Mahashivaratri. Less and less and less input so that the ego suffocates and what we feel is Shiva. On Monday, I had a demanding day. I shared that in our workshop last night. Yesterday was equally demanding, but yesterday I didn't eat or drink anything until after the workshop. But I was so immersed in Shiva that it didn't feel tiring. It didn't feel frustrating. Our entire lifestyle should be a tuning into Mahashivratri. Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha. Bhagavad Gita is written in poetry. It is not to be read as prose from left to right. When one lives, as is stated in the first line, one first becomes a yogi. A yogi means one who has a quiet mind. And then a sannyasi, the one who has a still intellect. To be practiced, invoked sequentially. Mind, then intellect. These are subtle refinements to ready us for joy. I watched a movie this weekend called Ford versus Ferrari. And I think his name is Ken Miles. He just keeps refining that car and that engine again and again and again, such simple refinements that makes him victorious. Now that's just with a car and an engine. Imagine one's personality. So these are not redundant teachings, they're refined teachings. Na niragnihi na chakriyaha. Just by not acting, that will not make one a yogi or have a quiet mind. Just by not making. See, a fire here means not making a ritual, not making food will not make one a sannyasi, will not help one to have a still intellect. What one does need to do is follow the teachings of chapters 2 through 5 in action, your responsibilities, and what will naturally unfold, we will feel unbound. We are bound by karma, kama, avidya. But if I live in the right way, I will feel unbound. This is shared again in verse 2. Shri Krishna is a master teacher. He ensures that we are clear. And we are clear, yes? How is it that I always laugh when I ask that and you laugh too? Aren't we insulting each other publicly? And now it's recorded too, so everyone can see that. Yam sannyasam iti prahuhu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahya sannyasta sankalpaha yogi bhavati kaschana. First quarter. Yam sannyasi, that is sannyasa, iti prahuhu. They describe. Remember, poetry. This is the translation, the implication, focusing on Prince Arjuna. Prince Arjuna does not want to engage in this fight. Us, we don't want to engage in our responsibility. So Prince Arjuna, he wants to escape from this fight. We also want to from our responsibilities through procrastination and so on. And here Prince Arjuna is externalizing. He feels that a sannyasi is determined by an externality, how they look, what they do, and his understanding is that they do nothing, so he wants to be the same. His disengagement, which is really escapism, he's externalizing this in a very subtle way, almost like a sattvic ego, an ego that annotates. A sannyasi is one who does not have desires. Is that external or internal? Do you all know what I desire right now? Can you see that? Are those waves emitting from my head? Is it flowing through my ear? It is internal. And the externality of not having a fire, that was referenced in verse 1. A fire here is indicative of desire. In our lives, this fire would be a desire for funds, a desire for food. But one without desire, that means no fire, so they're not living for funds and food. Shared in one more way. When one lives in an ashram, like I was doing, we had our head shaved regularly. Our hair is symbolic for desire. So now you all can see my desires, yes? And some of you are already enlightened. But you always keep a shikha, some hair on the back of your head. That is the desire for desirelessness. So the only desire one is to have is for desirelessness. And then sannyasa is when you feel this desirelessness, then you shave that off too. Just because you shave your head doesn't mean you've shaved off your desires. Please internalize. I feel so much of what we do is external, and meaning helps to internalize that. Yogam tam vidhi Pandava, Prince Arjuna, you should also know that this is yoga. A framework is being shared here. Yam tam. Sannyasam yogam. Prahuhu viddihi. Shri Krishna is emphasizing yoga precedes sannyasa. If you follow yoga, you will reach sannyasa. There is only one path. There are sections of one path based on one's maturity. When I drive to Toronto, there's one highway, but there's a slow lane, a medium lane, and a fast lane based on the mindset of the driver. But it's one highway, correct? It's not three highways. Yoga, that is the entry point. Using the words of Swami Chinmayananda, is living in a way where one is reducing anxiety. That relates to the phala, or results. When that is addressed, your living will then reduce agency. That relates to the karma, or action. I am telling you what Bhagavan Krishna has told Prince Arjuna. I am not making up. I am not interpreting what yoga is. You are reading the same words I am. All who are yoga teachers, yoga students. Yoga is when there's a long-term vision of less deservership, less doership. If I practice yoga and for some minutes or some hours, I have quietude of mind, but then I don't change for the rest of the minutes and hours, that is not yoga then. Is not. Nahi sanyasta sankalpaha. Nahi asanyasta sankalpaha. The one who is not renounced sankalpa. Sankalpa means thoughts. The idea being, if you haven't renounced thoughts, you cannot renounce desires. If you are not a yogi, you cannot be a sannyasi. The word sankalpa, because it can be interpreted positive and negative. Here it's being interpreted negatively. Sam means well. Kalpa means idea, means to create. Here, sankalpa means becoming. We call this bhavaroga, the disease of becoming. It is anti-being, correct? Pro-becoming is anti-being. What this feels like in our daily affairs, the one who is becoming feels they can create joy. Can you create joy? You can only be joy. Creating joy is when one is distracted. In their distraction, they start to compare. In our comparison, we feel jealous. And the devolving of jealousy is insecurity. You feel even less of yourself. If I cannot tend to my thoughts, I will be distracted, I will compare, I will be jealous, I will be insecure. So how can I be a yogi? How can I be a sannyasi? Yogi bhavati kaschana. One can never be a yogi if one is not living by yoga. Shri Krishna is building up. A sannyasi is one without desires. They are the ones who can change their identification from creating joy to being joy. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Oh. What are you thinking about right now? And now? And now? The thoughts are an expression, a further manifestation of desires. A desire intrinsically, inherently implies that one is incomplete. Our entire lifetime, our sense of I has been one of identifying with vasanas, identifying with a limit. This sense is false, is wrong. If this was real and right, why would we have desires? We would feel natural and complete, yet we don't. more authentic, more deep than the sense of I being, identification. Is infinity. Infinity is limitless, bigness. This is who you are. Tvam tat asi. And every thought, every breath is teaching us this. Our thoughts are to create joy. Our desires are to create joy. Our prints are to create joy. Why do we need joy? Because this is who we are. Our nature. All of our physical nature is trying to become more natural. From water to molecules. We are too in the most causal way. Beyond subtle. When we are dedicated to right actions with the right attitude, we will have less thoughts. Yoga is to reduce anxiety. Anxiety is a form of thought. When the thoughts shift from the external to the internal, there's a change from creating joy to being joy. One evolves from a yogi to a sannyasi. Then one reduces desires. with thoughts not pressuring us and desires not pressuring us, what's left? Prints or vasanas. All night, all day, we are identified, we feel with the anatma vasana. The print that we are an equipment. When the mind is quiet, this equipment is no longer an equipment. When the intellect is still, this equipment is no longer an equipment. Contemplation is meeting the ego. Visualize a dictator in a fortress, in a fortified city. Contemplation is having cleared the fortification, the fort. And now, just the dictator. If you can see the dictator, you have to be different. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.